Good evening. I am Erin Buchanan, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso, chairing the hearing on his behalf. This Uniform Land Use Review Procedure public hearing is being conducted from the Borough Hall courtroom. Under the agenda are two applications currently under review by my office. Please note that this hearing is being recorded to comply with the Open Meetings Law. The video will be posted on the Brooklyn Borough Presidents YouTube channel. Following the applicant's presentation and my question and answer session, members of the public who are in attendance tonight will have the opportunity to testify on the application. All comments are limited to 2 minutes. Members of the public may also submit comments to askreynoso@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for his consideration until Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. Please call the first item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 1160 Flushing Avenue rezoning, C210314 ZMK. This is an application by 1160 Flushing LLC for land use actions affecting all or part of 6 lots in the Bushwick neighborhood of Community District 4. The project area fronts the entire south side of Wyckoff Avenue between Flushing Avenue and Jefferson Street. The development site consists of 2 applicant-owned lots with a total area of 37,062 square feet. The applicant seeks approval for a zoning map amendment to change the project area from M11 to M15 zoning district. Approval of the requested actions would facilitate new development consisting of 2 separate buildings, a single-story commercial building and an 8-story mixed-use manufacturing, office, and commercial building. Community Board Vote 4 voted to approve this item on March 16th, 2023. And we can have the representative for 1160 come up and speak. And just state your name for the record and begin. Or
starting.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if he's downstairs, I think it's probably just easier. Yes, for 1160?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That saves us.
That
saves us like the technical switching around of the items.
Walk right up.
It's all good. Just please state your name and you can begin.
Yep. First of all, thank you all for having us here tonight. My name is Vivian Liao, and I'm one of the principals of Totem. My partner, Tucker Reed, hopefully will walk in here in a moment, and we have some of our other folks on our team who you'll get the chance to hear from. Next slide. Sorry. There we go. So we as a team take very seriously the process of community engagement, which is why we are proud to have worked so closely with our partners at Evergreen to help craft the proposal you're about to see. You're going to hear some more from Stephen on this in a moment, but first a quick intro to our firm, Totem. We are a Brooklyn-based real estate developer that approaches the building process in a community-driven way. Our inclusive developments focus on a few key principles, which you can see here around affordability, economic mobility, innovative partnerships, and regenerative design. In all our projects, we seek to work with neighborhood and industry advocates who know their communities best, which is why we have been working on this project every step of the way with an amazing partner and true champion for manufacturing and industrial preservation in North Brooklyn, Evergreen Exchange. I'm going to turn it over now to Stephen Fabian to tell you more.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Fabian. I work at Evergreen Exchange. Evergreen is a nonprofit economic development organization whose mission is to protect and preserve the manufacturing and industrial businesses of North Brooklyn because of their high-quality working-class jobs for the community. We are active, North Brooklyn, where we're active would be Greenpoint, Williamsburg, Bushwick, Bed-Stuy, and in general the community districts 1 and 4 and parts of some others. We've been around for 40 years, and we offer a range of free services, including assistance with real estate, financing, incentives. We offer educational workshops and seminars, and do a lot of advocacy work for the industrial and manufacturing communities. We are very excited to partner with Totem on this project because we believe that 1160 Flushing will not only forward our organization's goals, but also several important community goals. So the community in question is Brooklyn Community District 4, which is the neighborhood of Bushwick. You can see here the boundaries and a bit of the land use for the area, population statistics as well. On this next slide, which was it's called a snapshot of key community indicators, compiled by Community District 4, I want to highlight that in this area, there is a lower than average educational attainment, which is less than both the borough at large as well as the city as a whole, while also there is a higher than average amount of limited English proficiency, unemployment, and poverty. So for these reasons, manufacturing is a very important benefit to the community because these jobs are high paying compared to entry-level jobs in retail and food service, and they also have lower barriers of entry. So for someone that may not have an education or may not speak English, they're more likely to be able to get hired by a manufacturing company, gain skills, and potentially even work very close to their home. This is an area that has been studied quite intensively over the last several years. There's been several plans produced, including the North Brooklyn Industry and Innovation Plan, Bushwick Community Plan, and the North Brooklyn Brownfield Opportunity Area Study. I'd like to talk about the two on the ends, which were community-driven plans. Bushwick Community Plan was made by community residents and stakeholders, and the way that this project aligns with some of the key findings and recommendations of that plan include a desire to not have any residential space converted to not have any manufacturing space converted to residential, or any net loss of manufacturing in the areas that are predominantly zoned that way. So this project would do that. There's no housing involved, it's purely commercial, and it would retain the existing amount of manufacturing that the footprint has. Additionally, the community would like to see Flushing retained as an industrial corridor. That's an important truck route as well as a significant artery of the IBZ. This project would do that. And the community also wanted to see support for community jobs and manufacturing jobs, and this is really about that. There's an industrial component that has manufacturing jobs, and the density of the building is going to provide a lot of jobs. And the track record of Totem and Evergreen is such that we believe we will be able to find employers that will hire locally, as well as offer some local businesses the chance to grow in this space at 1160 Flushing. The other community plan is one Evergreen authored, the Brownfield Opportunity Area Study for North Brooklyn. And in that, we created several sub-districts of the North Brooklyn IBZ and created recommendations for sample projects. So in the south, where the 1160 Flushing is, we have an area called the Competing and Conflicting Land Use Sub-Area D. This is an area that, despite its industrial zoning, has become extremely commercial for the last several decades. And we expect that that will stay that way as much as we'd love a purely industrial IBZ. However, it's important to retain the industrial character because this area has many significant industrial anchor tenants and owners, including Boar's Head, Wonton, Martin Greenfield Clothiers. These are extremely job-rich employers. So what we found with that context is that mixed-use projects would be the ideal kind of project for this district, particularly public-private partnerships, because it's too hard for a mission-driven entity to compete at a purely affordable rate in an area that has perhaps the highest industrial rent rates in the city. So partnering with Totem is really ideal for Evergreen because it will allow us to do commercial development that can cross-subsidize an industrial component. And Totem will now walk through more about the site and the project.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so turning now to the project details. This slide just orients you to the site in Bushwick where our project is located. It's at the intersection of Flushing and Wyckoff Avenues, just around the corner from the Jefferson Street L station. The next station shows the current zoning of the site, which is M11, and our proposal to convert that to M15 in line with the community planning goals that Stephen just outlined. This shows a closer aerial view and how the proposed rezoning area starts mid-block and extends to Wyckoff. This slide narrows the focus even further. You can see our actual development site outlined in red here. And then these next few slides are just a number of views of the existing conditions today. Here are from all four corners of the development site and some additional views around it. And then turning now to the actual building program, what excites us about this project is the potential to forge an industrial preservation model developed, as we talked about, in partnership with Evergreen that could serve as a precedent for future projects in North Brooklyn and beyond. Specifically in this case, you see that we would be preserving industrial uses on site and providing growth opportunities for new businesses. You can see the breakdown of the space allocations here. And altogether, our projections show that this project has the potential to generate hundreds of new jobs, approximately 40 of them industrial jobs. And I'll turn it back over momentarily to Stephen to talk about how we'll curate the tenancy.
Sure. So Evergreen has been involved in this project and will be involved in this project in three main ways. So the first was having conversations with Totem about how to design and plan the industrial space. This is, a discussion of what kind of businesses are out there, what they're looking for, and then what really the space needs to be like to accommodate an industrial user in a practical way. We're sort of in the second section now, which is the community engagement and support role. Evergreen's been participating in hearings such as this, and as well as creating opportunities for Totem to strengthen its already strong community ties through stakeholder meetings and discussions. And then as we get closer to the project coming online, Evergreen will play a role in the industrial lease-up and management of this space. There's going to be a community benefit agreement that will allow us and Totem to work together to establish a fair market rent and ensure that every year we can monitor the space for compliance with the uses and employment count recording.
And then here is just illustrative layouts with some comparable precedents. The plans for our project call for ground floor retail space with a mix of industrial and office in the upper floors. And the building design has really drawn from the context and inspiration of the area, really taking into account the local art scene and community culture. And I'm going to turn it over now to Tucker to talk through the actual design, building design program.
Thanks, Viv. Good evening. Thanks for having us. I just thought we'd kind of close really walking through granularity on the building program. So as Stephen had mentioned, and a goal of our collaboration with Evergreen is really to try to create a model that would allow retail, industrial, and commercial space to coexist. So I think as you start to look at the building massing here, you start to see the red is retail. We've actually reintroduced an interesting pedestrian, or we think is interesting pedestrian connection between Wyckoff and Jefferson, or between Wyckoff and, Jefferson, yeah. Between Wyckoff and Jefferson, it used to be an old train rail that connected to some of the old industrial sites throughout the neighborhood. So kind of reintroducing that pedestrian thoroughfare actually creates a really interesting opportunity for small business retail along that alleyway. And then as we move up into the building, you start to see how the potential for the retail and industrial use to kind of blend and coexist. And we've been really excited talking to our friends at Evergreen about, you could imagine an industrial user that could use a public-facing showroom or retail space, whether it be a furniture maker or a jewelry designer or an artisanal food use. So to really have those two uses kind of coexist. And then as we move up into the building, you have more kind of traditional space for both the industrial and the commercial uses. As we could have a dedicated core to the upper floor commercial uses off of that alleyway, as well as dedicated loading docks along Flushing, where there's the preponderance of commercial traffic already, so would not draw new commercial truck traffic, hopefully into the interior of the neighborhood, but really keep it along Flushing Avenue. And then here you start to see some emblematic floor plate designs, ground floor retail. You see the opportunity to carve those spaces up into much smaller spaces to really cater both to bigger users, but also potentially small business owners and small retailers. And then as you move up into the building on the second floor, you start to see that coexistence between retail and industrial. What's also interesting is because that ground floor kind of rectangular retail building has the opportunity to have outdoor space on the roof of the second floor that could connect back to the retail space. Create a really kind of interesting urban condition in the neighborhood here. And then you start to see, as we move up into the more commercial-specific parts of the building, it's a nice square for the most part from a geometric standpoint, and so it can carve it up into smaller spaces. You could have a user that could come and maybe take 10,000 square feet, or we could carve it up into much smaller spaces at, say, 2,500 or 2,000 square feet, kind of more keeping in line with the kind of character of commercial use in a lot of the in Brooklyn-based neighborhoods. Some general notional ideas about what that alley and commercial connectivity could look like as you move through the building. There's lots of great precedents from around the country to draw on. Our architecture firm S9 spent a lot of time kind of thinking through that with city planning in terms of the width of the alley and what based on good precedent. And so we think we could create a really special experience here that takes a kind of forgotten, pathway through the neighborhood and reintroduces it. You see here the current condition isn't adding much value to the neighborhood in any real way. And you can imagine something really special here. And then finally, all of our projects at Totem, we really try to incorporate sustainable design aspects into our work. And so, the introduction of bioswales, green roofs here, just at what's hopefully just becoming common practice in a lot of development, but something that we put a special emphasis on as we talk about how to minimize the impact of a new building in the neighborhood, is start to think about sustainable principles. And so here you see a kind of preliminary rendering of the project, and we're happy to take any further questions. We have our land use council and our environmental team here as well to help answer questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have a few questions, and understand you've already started to answer a lot of them, but just for the record.
Sure.
What, if any, concerns did you hear at the Community Board 4 public hearing?
So we've been talking with the Community Board for quite a while about the project. So I don't think there were any real surprises at the hearing. We had some questions around public safety of the alleyway, right? How would one maintain the alley at night, particularly with public safety? And so we talked about kind of restricting access to the alley to like normal business hours, like once the building is closed, probably closing it off so not to create an unsafe condition. We heard some questions about, the types of employers and jobs, and I think you had some other questions about that. I can address that now if you'd like, or come back to it.
We'll come back to it.
Okay, but did we miss anything that kind of came up with the Community Board? I don't think so. In general, we had a very positive discussion with them, I think, and luckily working with our partners at Evergreen, we've kind of taken their concerns and tried to build it into the proposal from the beginning. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Do you have any tenants in mind for the industrial portion of development?
So we're still obviously at a very early stage of the development, so identifying a specific tenant 3 or 4 years before we could deliver the space is quite difficult. But part of the reason we're so excited to have Evergreen's expertise at the table is to help us facilitate that industrial outreach when the time comes. But Stephen, I know you're working on a project now. You're leasing up a building. Maybe you want to offer a little insight.
Sure. Yes, as Tucker said, we just finished our own project at 500 Stagg Street. So through that, we discovered there's a pretty high demand for high-quality industrial space. I think, the 2,000, 2,500 to say 5,000 floor plate is where we're seeing a lot. But what's nice about this property is it has the flexibility for larger users, which are also out there. Tucker had noted the kind of businesses that can use a mixture of retail and industrial, such as furniture, jewelry, and food and beverage. We expect that to be very prominent in the mix for the space when it's ready. Another thing that we think could fit is people in the fashion industry. It capitalizes on a lot of the energy and creativity of Bushwick while also retaining a manufacturing element, potentially also a retail element. And another one that we think could work is the uses adjacent to film, television, and multimedia production, with the building having a lot of office space that might accommodate some of the, office and non-production uses. It's also good to have that ecosystem, because the film and television world, for all the soundstage and office use, they need space for wardrobe, set design, props, other purely manufacturing uses. So I think that sort of combination is what we'll be looking at over the next few years as the project gets ready.
Cool, thank you. And to follow that, what kind of tenants do you expect for the commercial portion of the development?
Yeah, what's nice about kind of what Stephen was talking about, the narrative around the building, is that a lot of the kind of creative uses in Brooklyn have both maker needs in the manufacturing space, but also kind of traditional office or, for lack of a technical term, post-production type space. So I think we can imagine everything from designers and architects to post-production on video and content creation, to a local small business in the kind of digital marketing or design world, which is very prominent, has a very prominent user base in Brooklyn these days, and whether it connects back to, larger content studios that are now in Bushwick, like Netflix and others, or maybe they're working on an independent show that's planned for Netflix, but you can imagine a real creative ecosystem in the building that we would try to build.
Thank you. How will you ensure that the proposed alley is a safe and attractive, publicly accessible area?
Yeah, so I mentioned it a little bit in that we would try to limit access hours to when there are eyes and ears and light and security on site. But also we think like good design with street furniture and tree plantings and things that make the alley a really kind of unique urban experience, and even also how it reflects the rooftop access on top of the second floor of the retail rectangle. We think, and it really draws on the kind of DNA of ours at Totem, where we really try to focus on design as a placemaker. And so we're really excited to try and do something great here.
Thank you. How will loading be tailored for this unique intersection of Stewart and Flushing Avenues?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned the specific location of the loading dock along Flushing at the intersection of Stewart. We really went back and forth a lot with both our environmental team to understand the impact and also with city planning. I kind of arrived at Flushing as the ideal truck access point, given that we wouldn't want to necessarily introduce like large trucks into the more interior of the neighborhood at Jefferson that has a kind of quieter character and more pedestrian flow. So the intention of the introduction at the loading dock on Flushing was really tied to the current uses around the site. We should also mention that we've been approached by DOT as we move through the rezoning process about the potential of adding a traffic light at the intersection of Flushing and Stewart at our own expense, quite kindly, of DOT. So we have expressed an openness to that, to city planning, and as we kind of finalize the ULURP, to the extent that that is a desirable outcome by city planning and the city council, it's something and potentially the Borough President's office, it's something we're very open to.
Great, thank you. Are there any other specific required mitigation measures for this project, traffic or otherwise?
Jason, you want to talk? So our environmental consultant from Habib & Associates, Jason Diaz, is here. I'll let him weigh in.
Hi, thank you for having us. So in terms of mitigation, based on the DEIS, we recorded their signal timing at several intersections that would have to be changed in order to avoid to avoid some of the impacts. The other mitigations involved are crosswalk widening at Irving Street and Flushing. Specifically, the south crosswalk would have to be widened by 4.5 feet to completely avoid an impact at that crosswalk. DOT has also asked us, and we're in consultation with them right now, but they have asked us to also provide or commit to a transportation monitoring program to see if mitigation would need to be implemented after completion of the proposed project, as opposed to in 2027, where we studied also the completion of 2 non-applicant-owned projected sites. So the TMP would basically just monitor traffic, pedestrian flows, transit users to see if any of the mitigations need to be implemented earlier. And like Tucker said, there is that potential commitment to install a traffic signal at Flushing and Stewart.
Thank you. Have you been in touch with the neighboring properties within the rezoning area, and have they expressed any interest in redevelopment, and what potential new tenants have been discussed for those sites?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a point of discussion with the community board as we went through the process. So what you see on the screen here is, our site, which really covers the 2 lot numbers that are outlined in red. So to the east of us, there are 3 sites that are non-applicant owned that would be impacted by the rezoning. The first site directly to our east is a overbuilt warehouse building that's already quite successful commercial building. It's kind of home to artist lofts, but it's well overbuilt under the existing zoning. So the economics of redeveloping that building, tearing it down, and starting over don't seem to make a lot of sense. It's owned by a woman who's been in the neighborhood for many, many years, and she's expressed to us, no real interest in any redevelopment plans anytime soon. To the east of that site, does this have a pointer? No. But the larger site to the north and the east is a 1-story retail building. It was recently redeveloped. It has no tenancy right now, but the owner expressed to us that he went through great expense to demo and then rebuild that building as it is. So his attitude generally about potential new development rights on the site are, a nice-to-have thing for the future, but he doesn't expect to engage in any redevelopment anytime soon since he's already invested so much in the property. And then the final site, this kind of smaller rectangle to the south, is an owner-occupied iron shop, and the owner runs his iron shop out of there. He's expressed no interest in redevelopment.
Okay. Thank you. All right, and last question. How was the rezoning boundary established?
So again, it was through pretty thorough discussion with city planning. I think and our land use council. I think if we had our way, we would have limited the rezoning to specifically just the sites that we own. But as you all understand better than we do, the city planning zoning map doesn't like to have spot rezonings or leftover parcels, and so I think coming out of a lot of the neighborhood plans that city planning has been working on with a lot of the community groups over many years, that kind of identifying this area as a transition zone that Stephen talked about. There was a potential target for a city-sponsored upzoning to enhance or to attract additional commercial uses here, that this plan was very much in line with what the city had been working on for many years, and so I think they asked us to include the parcels to the east to get to the actual block face. Our land use council, Eric Plotnick's here. I think there's much to add to that, Eric, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Either one. And to follow up, they didn't mention extending it in the other direction to encompass the entire block?
Correct, they did not. There's a very active lumber yard to the west of us, directly to the west, and I don't know the exact rationale for why they did not ask us to extend it west, but I imagine it's because, I don't know, for fear of upsetting the business operations of that lumber yard.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public in attendance tonight. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone? No. All right. Hearing no comments, this item is now closed. Thank you so much. Please call the second item to the agenda.
Calendar item number 2, 1656 West 10th Street rezoning, C220285 ZMK, N220286 ZRK. This is an application by All Star Home Care Agency Incorporated to build a 6-story mixed-use development with residential and community facility uses. The project area spans 3 mid-block lots fronting West 10th Street. The 7,000 square foot development site is currently a social adult daycare center. The applicant is seeking a zoning map amendment to change the project area from R5B to R6A zoning districts, and a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with a rezoning area. Approval would facilitate the development of a 6-story mixed-use residential building with a social adult daycare facility on the ground floor and cellar floors. Community Board 11 voted to approve this item on April 3rd, 2023. And if you could just please state your name and present this application.
Eric Palatnik. And I believe you still have the previous presentation up on
Oh,
board.
yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Good afternoon or good evening. Eric Palatnik on behalf of 1656 West 10th Street. As was just explained earlier, it's a proposed rezoning from an R5B to an R6A on a mid-block. I think you'll see after we present it that we feel it's very fitting. The Community Board felt it was fitting as well. Community Board 11, they voted to support it 2 weeks ago, as you just mentioned. As you can tell here from this slide, the existing development site is a built originally as a religious institution and has been converted through the years to an adult daycare facility. It is the owners of the adult daycare that are sponsoring this application. The proposal is to knock down the existing structure and replace it with a 6-story multiple dwelling with ground floor adult daycare. The adult daycare operates from the hours of 8 a.m. till 2 p.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., I was right the first time, till 2 p.m. daily. It takes primarily people from the surrounding area. It operates via a minibus that picks up and drops people off. And it's been operating at the premises for about 8 years now, and it's done very well for itself. The proposal includes, as you can see here on the right side, a 25,000 square foot building at nearly 3.6 FAR, includes 21,000 square feet of residential space, 3,000 square feet, 3,500 square feet of community facility space, 27 units, 6 of which will be affordable, 19 one-bedrooms, 5 two-bedrooms, and 3 three-bedrooms, and 12 parking spaces at the cellar. This proposed zoning is depicted here on the right side of the screen. You can see we're extending from the R7A that's at the intersection of Kings Highway and Quentin Road down West 10th Street. We are incurring into the side street, but I think when you see the pictures of the as-built conditions, you'll agree that the side street is a very densely built-up condition. This is the proposal. You know what an R6A allows, so I'm not going to go through it, and I just explained it. This is a good picture to show you the context of the street. The existing building is in the middle, labeled site. You can see it's wedged, literally sandwiched between buildings on either side of it, which are much larger and actually slightly a foot shorter than us, but pretty much the exact same height as our building. As I'll show you as I start to flip around, this is pretty much the as-built condition of most of the neighborhood. It's a very densely built neighborhood. This is the proposal again. I just went through it, so I'll save you the time. This is the proposal in section form. I was remiss in telling you there's a cellar and subcellar where the adult daycare will be in the parking as well. The parking will be accessible via a ramp, and I'll show you that in plan form in a few minutes. This slide is very telling if one is trying to determine if it fits the character of the neighborhood. The building is proposed to be 65 feet in height. You can see it really fits neatly within the condition. This is a map the built condition. This is a map that shows you the proximity to transit. We are very close, although we're not in a transit zone, we are very, very close to multiple transit options. This is a zoning map. This is the neighborhood demographics, which I think are pretty telling. And I'll go through these for a few minutes. These were taken from the Racial Equity Report. The top left shows you the breakdown of the population, 43% Asian, 12% Black, non-Hispanic, 15.8% Hispanic, 36% white non-Hispanic, and 32% non-Hispanic. 63% of the total population is non-white. It includes a very large Asian population. These communities are growing. The foreign-born population in the lower left is 55%. Limited English proficiency, this is amazing, it's 48%. That's a lot of people that are having limited English. The housing on the right side shows you that we're not keeping track of it all. I have all this in graph form in a second, but basically producing 1.5% units of housing and 9.3% increase in population. The rent, this is the second one down, is also not keeping pace. 58% of the households are rent burdened. 32% are severely rent burdened, and it just keeps going and going. The affordability, people are spending an inordinate amount of money on their rent, which we all know. The housing shortage shown here, more detail with graphs and charts, but the top one is really the tell, which is that population has gone up 9%, but the housing has only gone up 1.5%. This is astounding. This map, every time we show it, it blows my mind. We're creating a measly 6 units of income restricted housing here, and it's having the effect of increasing the total number of units by 27% of affordable units. It shows you how few units there are if we could add 6, and the percentage goes up by 27%. This is the MIH numbers. Everything will be an average of 60%. There's not that many units, but we broke it down, so the 3 are at least at 40%, and then we went 2 at 60, and then 1 at 80, averaging at 40. This gives you the breakdown of the units. As you can see in the top rows, there'll be 16 market rate, there'll be 3 affordable, there'll be 21 market rate, 6 affordable. I went through that earlier. This is things we spoke about earlier about the adult daycare, so I won't waste too much of your time. The green space on the roof and in the backyard is what this is showing, this slide. But I'm also going to show you, this was a request, this was created in request to your questions about the environmental and green features we'll be having, which include everything you can see on the screen here. But this was the slide that I thought came up next, so this is why I misspoke a little bit there. The left side shows you the existing building, the front of the building, and the right side shows you the rear. And what we're trying to call out on the right, if you focus on the left side, which is the front, if you look on the right side of that image, you'll see the adjacent windows. I know there was a question from the Borough President about if we're blocking any adjacent windows. So you can see the way the building is set back a little bit there in the front. That's been designed to accommodate those adjacent windows. So the front of the building actually comes out, and then it steps down on the left and the right, sort of bookcasing the building in a reverse bookcase format. And the reason it does that flanked format is to allow the openings on the right-hand side so that we don't block any windows. Of course, they're not entitled to any windows there. There's no right to any lot line windows, but we're not blocking anybody's windows either. So that's how that depicts that. The right side shows you the rear. That very same building is now on the left side because we flipped you around, and they have windows in the back. The same thing has been done in the rear so that we don't carve into those windows. There is a light and air well in between there too, but that building has its own light and air well to accommodate that. And I could just show you here if you wanted to just see the as-built conditions. What I was talking about, the stepping back, the building on the left actually has an alley. You can see this chain link fence there that separates the two, but the existing building you can see is already stepped back a little bit. And here you can see those windows on the right side. That's the building on the right I was just speaking to. You can see the air conditioning unit up at top. It's obviously somebody's using those windows. You know, they have an air conditioner and whatnot. So we're not blocking those windows. Those are the windows that are being protected. Also, the setback of the building, although we're not flush right up on the property line, you can see the as-built condition on the block is that most of the buildings are not flush on the property line. So we do have a little bit of a planting area there that we are not mimicking, but that's what we're using to accommodate our setback. And this shows you the building in its form as it's proposed. I think it's a handsome addition to the neighborhood. A lot of time has been taken to work with the community and to work with the council member to give everybody the design requirements they're looking for. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. And we have a hard copy of the deck for you also if you'd like a copy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a few. Can you please show or provide in writing a containerized waste plan for this proposed development?
Yeah, I believe we have we'll write it up and give it to you, but I believe we have a what's it called? Not a compactor, I think, at the cellar level. So I'll give you that in a written form.
Thank you. And if you could just go back to the slide just to show what kind of sustainability features will be included in the site.
Yeah, there was a series of items, and we made the slide just to address that for you. But I probably won't find it now that you're asking for it. But it included low flow plumbing fixtures, Energy Star appliances, high efficiency heating and cooling systems, and the building is proposed to be electric. And we are proposing to include electrical vehicle charging capability in the cellar level for the cars.
Okay.
And we're solar ready, although we didn't propose to include solar, but now that I've heard there's all sorts of text amendments coming out today, maybe we'll be inspired.
And can you just reiterate how many affordable units are planned for the site?
Yes, there's 6 MIH units. There's 27 total units, and 6 of them will be MIH.
And do you have an MIH administrator
No,
in
we
mind?
don't. Brooklyn has a shortage of housing and a shortage of MIH administrators. There are not that many in Brooklyn. We've brought this to a couple of different people. It's too small for the people we've brought it to. We are making the application right now with a private MIH administrator named City5 Consulting, and we may end up working with them. We haven't decided yet, but we're eager to learn if there are any. There's also many public, not-for-profit public MIH administrators that if the Borough President has any recommendations of forthcoming, up-and-coming ones, groups, we'd be happy to speak with them. Thank
you. And last question, have the adjacent lot line windows had an impact on your development, leading you to not maximize the residential FAR?
I stole your thunder on that question. Yes, everything, not to reduce the MIA, not to reduce the FAR, it's had no negative impact. We've designed around it almost to the full FAR, but we have completely protected all of the adjacent windows, so we're not blocking any of these windows.
Okay, so designing around them has had no effect on the unit count?
No, there's no negative impact, no.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Palatnik.
Thank you for your time.
Excused.
Thank you.
We will now call for testimony on this application from members of the public. Please note that all comments are limited to 2 minutes. Hearing no further comment, this item is now closed. And this ULURP public hearing is now closed. The Borough President will review these applications and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission, which will hold its hearing at a later date. As a reminder, viewers may submit comments to the Ask Reynoso at brooklynbp.nyc.gov email for the Borough President's consideration until Tuesday, May 2nd. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Eric. Yes.
Thank you.